Oh boy, wish me luck I guess, especially noticeable after playing so much of Castlevania since about a month ago, and here we are now into, without a doubt, is one of the hardest Zelda games I've ever gonna have to go through, so wish me luck, like I said before. Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Silver the Hedgehog here, and I am from the likes of the Mexi Toys videos here. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll present to you our next The Legend of Zelda Let's Play for our channel, and this time we're going to be hit on to Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. First came out on the Famicom Disk System, but then later on the NES, which as you can tell from the actual game's title alone, this is basically more likely like a sequel to the first The Legend of Zelda game. So, for instance, after Ganon was destroyed, Impa told Link a sleeping spell was cast on Princess Zelda. She will wake only with the power of number 3 Triforce sealed in a palace in Hyrule. To break the spell, crystals must be placed in statues in 6 well-guarded palaces. Link set out on his most adventuresome quest yet. So yeah, apologize for that particular slow reading text here and there, but that's just because about the fact that I'm not exactly great at reading. I know for the fact that Twilight Sparkle, she was actually pretty much expert when it comes to reading such. So, as you can tell from the actual quality standpoint, I'm going to be playing this on my NES Classic Mini, because I was originally trying to able to play it on the Wii U Virtual Console re-release version, but truth be told, because of the forms of some dull colors, and especially noticeable with the quiet audio, so as a result of that kind of stuff though, about the fact that I think I might as well stick around with the, you know, the NES Classic Mini for the majority of this Let's Play, just like the forms of how it does it from The Legend of Zelda. So, now of course, just like the first game, you're able to actually access the file selection screen. However, things got a little bit more different this time. And as a result of that particular matter though, is about the fact that I believe this game first came out in 1987, if I recall, according to the forms of the copyright Nintendo bit, and during the forms of that particular story scrolling part. Well, I'm not exactly for sure, honestly, because I haven't exactly touched this game for quite some time. Although the last time I actually played this game, believe it or not, was back in 2018, despite the fact that I'm pretty much not good at this game, especially noticeable because let me tell you something right from the get-go. This is without a doubt is the hardest Zelda games I've ever played, which you'll see why as soon as we're able to actually dive right into the actual game itself. So, obviously, I'll just simply type my name right here. So, just in case if you probably couldn't tell already, yeah, I am Silver the Hedgehog. So, either way, though, again, wish me luck for doing this, especially noticeable because, relatively speaking, though, along with the forms of, you know, after the events of, you know, we play for the entire Castlevania games, like Castlevania 1, 2, 3, Super Castlevania 4, Bloodlines, and you probably name the rest of it though, for those of you ever experienced the month of Castlevania since in October. So, either way though, yeah, let's just get the game started, shall we? So, yeah, basically the main objective in this game is about the fact that we need to claim ourselves the third piece of a Triforce, known as the Triforce of Courage. Because as you can tell, that Princess Zelda was somehow got cast a spell for the sake of the forms of she was actually asleep. So obviously about the fact that your objective here is to able to go through 6 palaces, or temples for those of you who lived in any other countries for that matter. So obviously about the fact that you need to go from point A to point B, and basically about the fact that we can able to actually do some more, you know, stabbing things for certain enemy encounters and all that stuff. However, for those of you probably wondering about that particular point where obviously today's date, of course, is the 4th of November today, in this case in 2023 today, and for those of you probably wondering that both Mighty and Ray have both forgot to mention about this during the course of the forms of this Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3 Let's Play. As a result, yesterday, that WarioWare Move It has recently came out yesterday, which I'll explain more details on about it once we're able to get this playthrough started. So as you can see about the fact that we actually come across into those peanuts bag, which I have no idea why I somehow bring that particular points up. But obviously, if you manage to able to obtain those P bags, basically this actually gives us experience points, which as a result, depending on what enemy types you're able to encounter, and then every time you're able to actually kill one of the enemies, you're able to actually get yourself to experience points, which I'll explain more details about that once we're able to get the actual main game started by going through the first temple if we decide able to actually go ahead and explore quite a number of things here and there. So, yeah, relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that, yeah, obviously about the fact that unlike the other games in the series, specifically in Zelda 1, there's no, weapons you can able to actually use to your disposal. All he does is it basically just gives you like a sword and a shield, and that's about it. However though, there are a couple of times though you might able to come across into the introduction to towns to explore. Like for instance, about the fact that we're going to be exploring the first town in the game, which obviously about the fact that we can able to actually just pay a visit to one of the townspeople to able to learn certain stuff here and there, and especially noticeable you can able to actually read through any other dialogue here and there. And as a result for that particular matter though, about the fact that it just gives you certain advice and stuff like that. Somehow, every single enemies around Hyrule, specifically Ganon's followers, are actually all over the place in Hyrule and they want Link dead. Not just because they involves the penalty revenge of any sort, they want able to use Link's blood and resurrect Ganon from his ashes, which is awfully dark during the forms of that particular Zelda standards this time. So as a result for that particular matter though, I'm also able to try my best to try not to die too many times. Well, if I do, well trust me when I'm saying this, it is easy to die in this game, especially noticeable just like in Zelda 1, except the fact that unlike in Zelda 1, I feel like the actual controls and the momentum feels a bit archaic, whilst in here though, thankfully though, that the actual moveset is a little bit more versatile this time around though, so either way. And as you can see, we're now actually entering in this particular building right there, and as a result, we can able to meet up with this old man all the way to the right of this particular screen right there. And this is where we're able to actually encounter one of the first magic spells. So as a result, I think the first magic spell we can able to utilize with is the shield, which obviously protects you for the forms of, well, certain amount of things here and there. However though, I haven't exactly figured out the controls for myself, you see, because obviously, like I said before, it's been about 5 years ago since I actually have last played this game for sure. Although, relatively speaking though, about the fact that, well, as you can tell, differently from the likes of in the first game, rather than going for the top-down perspective, when it comes to the forms of trying to able to explore dungeons and all that stuff and the overworld, we're now in the side-scroller, ladies and gentlemen. So as a result, because the gameplay formula has completely changed, I'm guessing they're trying to able to actually just try to match things up with the forms of the first Super Mario Bros. Game to cap off the actual success for that game. So as a result for that particular matter though, is about the fact that Link can actually jump in this game, which that was before when The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom exist, when it comes to the forms of trying to able to jump. So as a result for that particular matter though, is actually pretty swell if I have to say so for myself. So, but either way though, oh, and throughout the forms of the overworld, you might able to come across into enemy encounters every once in a while. So, relatively speaking though, about the fact that you can able to actually decide able to attack them, or run away in case if you want to get yourselves a little bit of emergency sake. However, there's not something I would recommend doing. You see, in this particular game, like I said before, it does have experience points, and the more you obtain certain experience points, you're able to actually level up one of 3 different attributes, which appears to be life, attack, and especially noticeable with magic. So because of that though, yeah, we're able to try our best if we're able to actually try our best to able to level up throughout the game, and as a result for that matter though, again, it is tremendously difficult, especially noticeable about that particular point. I can totally seemly to say that most people think about the fact that this game in particular is probably people's least favorite Zelda games, which I possibly understand why, especially noticeable because of the different direction, and on top of that, how much punishing the difficult can be, and also, on top of all that stuff though, with all that enemy encounters like these stupid little dog-like creatures, they just somehow throws the actual boomerang at us, and wow, we did manage to get wrecked very easily. Now, I will classify for saying this right now is that for those of you who have a first time experiencing the game, either on the Nintendo Wii U Virtual Console re-release version, as well as the 3DS Virtual Console re-release version, and heck, with the forms of the classic NES, the NES Classic Mini, and every now and then the Switch Online membership services, I highly recommend you're able to do, like, save states, because otherwise, if you don't feel like trying to get a game over, well, I'll explain more details about that if we dare come across into a first game over in this game, because as I said before, I will eventually die quite a lot of times in this game, especially noticeable because much like in Zelda 1, that basically though, the enemies are too punishing, so... Alright, here we go on to the first palace, or the first temple in the game, as far as this is concerned. And for those of you probably wondering, that music is somewhat iconic, and that's because about the fact that that particular temple music we're able to actually bring back for the sake of the forms of ever since in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and it'll become a lot more popular throughout the majority of the series up to this point, including buddy forms of Smash Bros. Brawl, and especially noticeable with the forms of Smash Bros. For the Wii U, and now Ultimate. Except on the 3DS version, just because of the limitations of the actual spacing for how much stages they do have in here and there. So, but either way though, that must have been said something, so... But, relatively speaking though, about the fact that, as I said before, that yesterday, that, WarioWare Move It recently came out, yesterday, and oh no, whenever I managed able to play that game on my own time, I did have a lot of fun with it though. Sure, it might take a bit while to get used to with how the motion controls are going to be involved in this, especially noticeable about the fact that not only do you now need to be able to utilize your entire body to do crazy motions, but also about the fact that you now utilize the forms of 2 Joy-Con controllers, no Pro controllers or anything else like that, so, which I totally get with the actual unique selling points of that particular game in mind, so... And relatively speaking though, about the fact that we've only just got roughly about 13 days to go until the Super Mario RPG remake on the Nintendo Switch should be on the horizon, so, and in fact it's just around the corner too, so either way though, and of course, just like the forms of how it does it in the first Zelda game, that you do come across into locked doors where basically you do need to acquire a key to be able to actually access to certain rooms throughout the majority of the forms of certain temples or dungeons, or generally speaking though, we're not going to be exploring through temples basically, so but either way though. Now, there is something I would classify for saying is about the fact no matter what though, that on the Famicom Disk System version, they obviously do manage to have some additional sound effects, and even especially noticeable with the actual music is slightly altered slightly because of the actual, like, runs on a floppy disk or something like that, which as a result of that kind of stuff, though similar to the forms of how it does it on not only the first Legend of Zelda game, but also with the forms of Metroid, and especially noticeable with Kid Icarus, and even there are some other ones here and there as well, which I could possibly think about on top of my head, but obviously about the fact that it's been a very long while since I actually have last played my NES since, DuckTales 2 for the NES Classic Mini, just in case about the fact that we can pretty much guarantee to able to actually do a lot of stuff here and there. Oh, every once in a while you do come across into fairies every once in a while, which actually, you know, restores your health, just like the forms of how it does on the first game, except the fact that, well, sometimes I will admit though right away that fighting fairies is a bit tricky in my opinion, especially noticeable because, jeez, those enemies keep kicking my butt until later on throughout the game, especially noticeable at that particular point where, you know what I mean about the fact that sometimes they get a bit more aggressive, and on top of that, sometimes they just pop out of nowhere, and on top of that, everything else in this game decides to punish you, and oh jeez, that enemy right there looks very familiar, doesn't it? Like the way that he moves around and tosses things, yeah, it feels like the equivalent to the Hammer Bros, and I hate Hammer Bros. Well, the only time exception is playing as him during the forms have been not only in Mario Kart Tour, but also with Mario Party 8 and Super Mario Party, but that's besides the point, so... But either way, that's why I can really talk about the forms of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Although, there's one thing you must be able to realize something is that this game has no map function. So because of this though, yeah, you have to do a massive guesswork of where exactly what the heck you're supposed to go. Well, during the forms of the actual palaces or temples to be more specific. So because of this though, yeah, it might be a little bit more of a cumbersome if you're trying to able to get confused by this. So, oh, and another thing too, we've only just got about 6 more days to go until the next Marvel movie is going to be on the horizon, which appears to be The Marvels, so yeah, that's what I can really ask for, as far as for the sake of convenience. Oh, and another thing too, about the fact that, jeez, the little stupid disco skull things that just liked able to mess me up at one point. And on top of that, with all these ridiculous slimy blobs that just somehow makes an appearance in this game, which I know for a fact that they are, you know, once again a bit of a pain to deal with, just like the forms of how it does it on Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. So as a result, yeah, that's what I can really say about the forms of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link somehow. Especially notable because concerning about that particular point where, well, again, just wish me luck when it comes to able to experiencing this game, especially notable concerning about that particular point that, obviously as I said before, that we've already experienced some difficult games, during the forms of in the past anyway, ranging between, Castlevania games like Castlevania 1, 2, 3, and especially noticeable with Bloodlines, and you name the rest. Especially noticeable because we already pointed that out, throughout the forms of the majority of the forms of October month, basically, so. But hopefully by that time until next year, once it's almost approaching onto 2024, then we'll start able to get a little bit more of an easy side. Although, sometimes though, that we might come across into certain, trickier games as far as trying to go for 100% completions and all that stuff, like one of those examples being Warrior Land, the Shake Dimension, because of all the missions, treasure locations, and you probably name the rest of it though, so. And obviously about the fact that, in addition about the fact that you know that both Mighty and Ray are still going to be playing through Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3 for the majority of the forms of Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and recently, that's Luigi just somehow managed able to go back onto Luigi's Mansion recently on the likes of on Thursday, especially noticeable because despite the fact that it's a bit better late than ever I suppose when it comes to going on to Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube version most likely, that's just because about the fact that still, we very appreciate that we can finally dive right into the rest of the forms of the Luigi's Mansion trilogy now that the Switch version of the forms of, you know, Luigi's Mansion 2 is now a thing, until specifically next year, so that'll be pretty exciting as far as this is concerned. Alright, there we go. Now we actually take down one of the toughest enemies so far, and we got ourselves a candle, which allows us to able to see in the darkness caves. So that'll be pretty useful, especially noticeable that just like in the forms of the first Zelda game, sometimes though if you come across into certain items, it will help you throughout your journey. So yeah, that's what I can really say about this, I guess. So. And throughout the majority of the game, you do come across into the heart container as you saw. For a few moments ago, just like the forms of how it does it in the first Zelda game, it actually increases your health bar, so. And this is actually the first ever Zelda game to able to introduce to the magic meter, which allows you to able to do certain spells, depending on how much spell points you're able to actually cost with, so. Yeah, that's what I can really say about it, I guess. And eventually though, the more you level up, then the required experience points might get ridiculously high. So, but either way though, I'm pretty sure the maximum in this particular experience points count will have to be by the forms of 9,000 experience points, which, let me tell you, it is impossible to get to this point, especially noticeable because concerning about that particular point where sometimes though that, you know, just like in Zelda 1, and especially noticeable with the majority of the Zelda games throughout, basically though it's about the fact that certain item pickups are pretty much random, depending on what enemy types you're able to actually encounter. So, but either way though, that might be saying something, so. Ah, dang it, there goes my first death. Oh, and another thing too, aside from the fact you do have a life meter, as well as the forms of, well, the magic meter, we also now actually have extra lives in this game. So, if you lose all three, it is basically you give yourselves a game over, and it did say Game Over, Return of Ganon. So because of that though, because the enemies themselves really want Link's blood, and as a result for that particular matter, you're gonna get butt kicked a lot. Especially noticeable because in the first temple, as you can tell, where we're able to actually introduce into ourselves these annoying enemies called the Iron Knuckles, where Iron Knuckles just basically decide able to block in just about every single placement except with your well-timing jump stab. So because of that though, you're about to able to actually gonna get hit a lot. Especially noticeable, I almost assume about the fact there's gonna be a total cakewalk at first glance, but as I said before, this game is so difficult. Gee, no wonder why a lot of people seem to really do not like this game as much as nowadays. Especially noticeable because not only because of the lack of the forms of the built-in map function, but I highly recommend you're able to do a bit of a guide syndrome if you decide able to actually just try to figure out what the heck you're supposed to go during the forms of some temples or palaces. So because of that though, yeah, you're probably gonna get a lot of experience at this point, people. Especially noticeable because if you don't manage to obtain certain experience points, well, just like the forms of certain RPG games, you're probably gonna get wrecked. So, and here's the first boss in the game. So basically we have to able to do a well-timing jump stab right onto its head, like a horse head or something like that. And it's relatively an easy fight. So because of that, there is so much of a cakewalk compared to the forms of how it does it for the majority of certain rooms of the first palace or temple to be more specific. So yeah, I honestly have no words to able to think about it, I must be quite frank. And from here we're able to get not only additional more experience points, but also if we go through here, obviously in addition to placing the actual crystal into this particular shrine little objects, and also we're able to actually get ourselves a free level up. Meaning about the fact that we can able to go all the way up to a certain amount of points, and we can able to choose life will go up. So that should be all pretty swell. So that pretty much takes care of the forms of the first palace or temple to be more specifically. So as a result, we can now able to move on to the next temple. But it will take a very long while though, especially noticeable because not only do we have to go through the exactly same arenas or areas as before, but we now need to able to realize about the fact that there's going to be some very dangerous routes we can able to go into. And as I said before, that this game is going to able to kick my butt at any point worth noting for. I almost assumed that Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels is going to be a very difficult game. Well, specifically on the NES or the Famicom Disk System version, mind you. But as a result for that matter though, it's just about the fact that sometimes I'm up for the challenge when it comes to able to tackling through some very difficult games to go through. I could imagine about the fact that if I was trying to play through Super Meat Boy at one point, obviously I'm about to get wrecked too, especially noticeable with certain level designs. Although at the very least in Super Meat Boy, at the very least you don't able to actually lose lives, you get yourselves a total death count. So as a result, that you can die as many times if you keep screwing up. So because of that though, yeah, that's why I can really talk about the forms of Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link. In fact, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Have you guys ever experienced Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link throughout the majority of your life? Well, as a result, the first time I've ever able to actually experience this game was in much like the forms of any other games for that matter in the past. The first time I actually experienced this game was actually on the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console re-release version back in during the forms of in the 2000s era, or specifically by the end of the 2000s era, before we move on to the 2010s era. And let me tell you, I haven't got far into this game, mainly because, my god, this game is so darn difficult. I know I keep saying this a lot, but it bears repeating during the forms of the majority of this Let's Play in mind. But I will try my best able to actually get as many of those things as possible. So, either way, so if you're probably wondering, what happens if you do manage to able to get a game over in this game? Well, as I said before, in addition to able to showing you guys the forms of the actual, like, although it did say on the actual text saying game over, the return of Ganon, and basically not only that, you can able to actually save your game, like save your progress, just like the forms of how it does it on the first Zelda game. However, it actually takes you back to the Hyrule Temple, which every time whenever you do get a game over, it transports you back to the beginning portion of the game where Zelda was sleeping. So because of that though, this is the most bullcrap moment in the game for me. So because of that though, gee, no wonder why that a lot of people don't like this game as much, which as a result, I can totally see why this game is often considered to be the black sheep of the series because of the side-scroller approach, but also because of how stupidly hard this game is. So, but I will admit though right away is that the overall control of Link is actually not too bad actually. Like the actual momentum feels a little bit more slightly fluid than the likes of say Simon Belmont from Castlevania, that's for sure. And on top of all that stuff though about the fact that at the very least you can now able to, well, I already mentioned this before, aside from you can able to jump, you can also able to crouch in this game. So again, similar to the forms of where before, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom did manage to able to bring back the crouching system, so I am error. Oh yeah, that's the meme back in the day when it comes to knowing about that particular dialogue right there. Especially noticeable because it somewhat feels a bit more recognizable as such, so... But either way though, let's go ahead and talk to this little woman right there, so just in case we can able to actually go ahead and deliver the trophy to her. And as a result, we can now able to actually see her uncle, which meaning about the fact that we could probably able to actually learn the next spell. So as a result, as to be expected, this is a 400% completion playthrough, meaning about the fact that we need to obtain all of the heart containers, every single magic spells, and especially noticeable, just try to able to increase the magic meter as well. And also, thank God there's no seizure reducing moments, especially noticeable because for what I've heard on the emulator, for what I've noticed, is that if you ever play this game on the emulator on your computer, sometimes you will come across into eye sensitivity moments when it comes to that particular seizure reducing moments. Like, every time when you die, it causes the actual seizure to happen. In addition to that, every time if you learn a new magic spell, it also gets like flashing images, which might be felt a bit disorientating. And on top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that, well, even though it's a bit tricky to explain, because I know for a fact that, like I said before, it's been a very long while since we actually managed able to last play something related to The Legend of Zelda since, I would say, the first Zelda game back on the NES, well, specifically in 2022, that's for sure. Especially noticeable because as far as what, you know what I'm saying, that Sonic has already mentioned about this before, about the fact that I want to boost up the actual quality, and especially noticeable the commentary feels a little bit more good this time around though, so but either way though, as opposed to the forms within the Nintendo Wii U Virtual Console re-release version of most of those NES games, that I feel like the color tone is a bit dull, and every once in a while there might be a couple of flickering moments here and there, especially noticeable because I was expecting if I was trying to able to, let's just say restore my magic meter or anything else to be more specific, but either way though, again, it's been 5 years ago since I've last played this on my own time, especially noticeable because concerning about that particular point, I was actually going quite far on the Wii U Virtual Console re-release version, despite having to keep on using save states, because obviously with save states, it'll be pretty useful, because without one, my god, you're about to die a lot, so... And something tells me with that particular 3 zeros, if you manage able to start up your file, basically that signifies the death counter, just like the forms of how it does it on most of Zelda games up to this point, except with some 3D Zelda games like the Wind Waker or Phantom Hourglass or Skyward Sword or anything else to be more specific, so... And yeah, I will try my best if I was trying to able to pick up as many of those side quest selections of items or something like that. Although, then again, no, I apologize for my commentary is a little bit disorientating at times, especially because I need to concentrate so hard for the sake of the forms of trying to go past those godforsaken enemies. Especially noticeable because they can really hurt you in this game. And especially it's bad enough about the fact that what makes this annoying though is that obviously ever since any forms of being the Castlevania games, well, obviously if you get hit by certain enemies, especially in worst case scenario, if we dare manage to come across into a section where it contains bottomless pits, obviously about the fact that you suffered knockback. My god, knockback exists in this game. And on top of all that stuff though, in a later portion of the game, you will come across into this very annoying invisible pit fall traps. So because of that though, gee, it feels very similar to Castlevania, that's for sure, when it comes to difficulty in mind. But I'm sure we'll try to able to make it at this point. Oh, by the way, in order to able to get up there, we need to learn a jump spell, which as a result allows you to jump higher. So even then, that'll be pretty much mandatory if you really want to progress into next different sections. So, oh yes, I got myself a nice little fairy, so I can able to restore my health immediately, just in case I don't want to die again. So either way though, or even worse, if I do get a game over up to this point, obviously I'm also able to actually restart the entire exploration all over again. It gets worse though during the forms towards the end game, where basically though you have to go through so many battle sequences just to reach that specific place, and without any sort of magic supply, then obviously about the fact that don't be surprised if you manage to beat this in a critical condition. Well, then again though, we have to wait for that, and during that specific things worth noting for, I guess, so... But, anyway, aside from that specific stuff, as I mentioned this earlier, about the fact that, when it comes to experiencing WarioWare Move It on my own time, I did have a lot of fun with it so far, especially noticeable because I still really enjoy, Nintendo Classic microgames that involves 9 Volt, obviously. In addition to that, I'm not exactly sure what the review scores is going to turn out to be. I'm sure I'll discuss more details about that, and during at some point until tomorrow anyway, so... Now, as a result, that so far that, you know, with Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3 is expected to be on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, as I mentioned this before. And as far as Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube, as far as I'm concerned, is obviously going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, as far as Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link is for certain, that will have to be on the entire focus is on the weekend department, because despite the fact that this game is going to be also kind of short, well, depending on the forms of the death situations that you will come across into throughout the majority of the entire adventure by this point. So, anyway, so once you talk to this particular man, as you saw, basically that allows us to able to draw out the bridge, so that way we can now able to go across the forms of the next section. So, yeah, there's not much else I can say about this. Alright, so let's go through here. So, just to ensure about the fact that we can able to avoid those little ridiculous enemies right there. And luckily, if you do have your shield with you, then obviously you can able to block projectiles while crouching, despite the actual traction of it is actually not as strong as I've hoped it will be. But if we go in here, I believe there might be something in here, which is of course some more experience points, so that should be all pretty swell. So, oh jeez, they all hop around like nothing else. Although, potentially speaking, once we make our way to the next, town, then obviously about the fact that we can able to find the, oh god! Oh jeez. They all go into this very crazy formation there. And it's the most annoying part about the game, though, is that much like in, Metroid 1, basically, though, there's that one annoying moment is the actual, like, when if you run out of your health, then obviously you get come across this annoying 8-bit warning sounds. So, anyway, though, with that being said, though, I think we should probably be ending up this point right here, so join me next time for more of Let's Play of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Now we're going to be exploring through the water town of Soria, and able to actually do some more stuff here and there. And oh boy, it gets really ridiculous if you ask me when it comes to the difficulty, so I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.